to welcome everybody back to Buford Pusser, the other story. Today we're going to talk about Buford Pusser and the TBI investigation that is going on with the death of Pauline. Now, a lot of you have been contacting me through email, through messenger, through messages, phone calls, every which way, wanting to know where the investigation stands right now. Well, I don't know anything more than you do. I'm not affiliated with the TBI. I was just an interested party in all this that kind of got the ball rolling with some of the things that I'd located and informed the TBI of. So that's about all I can tell you about the investigation. But what I will say is that I have great admiration for what the TBI is doing. This is a case that they did not really have to get into and look into. It is one where they realized that they might possibly be taking down Tennessee's biggest law enforcement icon. And yet they were willing to do it because, Pauline didn't have to die. And we still need to know why she died and who was behind it. And as most of you know, a lot of the evidence points to Buford. So there is that. Now, we'll say that the TBI of today is not the same TBI that they were in 1967 when this case first came about. Back then, they were not as professional as they are today. Today they do not have the political interference that the TBI did back in 1967. It's just a whole new game. And so I'm excited about them being involved in all this now. Now, a lot of people want to know why it takes so long, what an investigator does. Well, as far as what an investigator does, they're the person that has immediate access to the scene of a crime and very mundane things like record the time that they believe that her homicide took place, for instance. An investigator needs to get the name of the first officer on the scene, what time he arrived, what he saw when he arrived, needs to record the name of everyone that is there at the scene, filter out who was there first, look for witnesses, record the name of all the law enforcement officers that are there, the first responders that are there. You need to have it set up where only those that have an immediate responsibility have access to that crime scene, just to keep down the contamination that could occur and throw an investigation into turmoil. And like I say, you need to identify the witnesses, who they were, how long they were there, what they saw, what they heard. You also need to arrange for witness interviews. For instance, you want to keep witnesses separated so that they can't compare notes. So you try to separate them, arrange for a time for them to be interviewed by either you or another investigator. You want to examine the crime scene itself, take a look around, see what you see, try to determine what's of utmost importance. One of those things, especially being the victim of a crime. You want to document everything that you can. Back in 1967, they took photographs. Now we take photographs, and it's always best to video the scene. That is possibly the best record that you'll have. You've got to protect the scene from any contamination, and that can come from anybody walking through your crime scene. That's the reason for keeping the number of people narrowed down to just the necessary people that need to be there, whether it be other police officers or first responders. You protect the place from contamination. You get photographs. Uh, you determine if there's more than one scene. For instance, like in Pauline's case, they focused primarily on the bridge, the first alleged ambush site. It was later they found out that there was a second ambush site 2 miles down the road. Well, then, of course, where the car was located, south of Eastview, that made a third crime scene. But the thing that puzzles me is that I have never heard of them being at the Pusser residence to check there to see if that may have been a crime scene. And to me, that would have been very important. TBI today, I think, would have gone through all those steps and a lot more. Now, you know, an investigator's job, like I say, is to manage the crime scene. One thing that you do is appoint an officer to, if you don't have, for instance, like a criminal investigation division in your department or whatever, you have somebody that you specify to photograph and video all the evidence. Document everybody that is there. Again, that person, you should have a person that restricts entry of all traffic. In the case of the 67 ambush, they should have restricted traffic in the form of vehicles, as well as law enforcement officers, first responders, and other people just coming along that didn't have any actual business of being in the crime scene area itself. You'll see a lot of times that there will be a crime scene and you'll see a lot of officers there, but you also see a lot of them standing away from the immediate scene. And that's to keep from contaminating it. At any rate, then you want to go through a documentation of a scene. Again, photographs, you want to videotape everything. You don't want to disturb any of the evidence until that you've got that done. And note the evidence that is to be collected. You want to get precise measurements of where the evidence was found in relation to, say, a fixed object or the victim themselves, so that if necessary, you can reconstruct the scene at a later time if need be. Again, you note all the evidence to be collected. You document each piece by, well, for instance, type, whether it's a weapon, if it's, say, blood evidence, whatever. You want to document who found it, when they found it, where they found it. You want to make a sketch of the scene. And that's when you get those precise measurements I mentioned. And then above all, you want to protect the evidence. Again, contamination can destroy a case. So for instance, if you're outside and let's say it looks like it's going to rain, snow, something like that, you want to protect all your evidence that you can from any contamination from the weather. For instance, hey, it's going to rain and you've got a person here and you've got blood evidence that you need to protect. You have to think about those things just as quickly as possible. Next phase is canvassing an area. For instance, in the 1967 ambush, I don't know if they sent anyone out to the homes nearest to the ambush sites to see if anybody saw or heard anything. For instance, it's out in the country and you had homes that were some distance away, but you would suspect that they may have heard gunshots that morning. You suspect that they may have heard two cars racing down that road early in the morning. Did they do that? I don't know. But those are the sort of things that you want to do. Then there comes to what you do with the suspect. Now, if you have a suspect and you obviously want to advise them of their constitutional rights, you don't want to jeopardize the case by violating their rights. Uh, you don't ever allow a suspect to return to a crime scene because they could contaminate it at that point in time and throw a case into jeopardy. Uh, After you've advised them of their rights, should have mentioned this a moment ago, you need to see if they will sign a waiver. Uh, Also, things like uh, you may be busy as an investigator and you're going to have somebody else transport a suspect. You need to remember to advise that officer not to question the suspect as he takes him in, but he needs to also be instructed that anything that that suspect says needs to be documented. So there's several different ways of doing that. It can be done in a car by camera. If they don't have a camera in the car, they do it by making notes just as soon as they possibly can. You don't ever allow a suspect to do things like wash their hands, change their clothes, because that can either contaminate or destroy evidence. And a lot of times, as you know, what's on a victim's hands can tell you a lot. What's under their nails can tell you a lot. Uh, if they have blood spatter on their clothes, uh, other bodily fluids, that tells you a great deal. But the point is, you record everything that you can. Have it a time associated with it as best you can, so that that makes your case just that much stronger. Before you interrogate somebody, it's always a good idea to get with the prosecutor if one is available and see if they have any particular questions that they would like for you to pursue. And in some cases, they may even ask to sit in on an interrogation with you. Now, when you look back at the ambush of 1967, you have to wonder, uh, did the officers do all the things that they should have? Were they trained to that degree that they jumped through all those hoops? For instance, maybe the TBI knows, but I have never been certain where Buford's handgun ended up. Now, I've read in different places that after the ambush, that Hugh Kirkpatrick, the chief of police of Selmer, took possession of Buford's firearm. Don't know if that's true or not. That's just one of those things that you hear and try to follow up on, and I haven't been able to make any firm determination on that myself. But there's things that you would like for to see happen today. Now, a lot of people don't understand what the TBI is doing now, and I can only guess, but I'll give you my thoughts on that. Since they've really become involved in this case now, I think they're probably going back, trying to determine if any of the original witnesses are still alive. They'd probably re-interview them to see what information they might ascertain from them. They might also ask, well, was there anybody with you? Who else saw what you saw, and try to get additional witnesses, because I know they were out there because I found several. So there is that. I'm sure that they would want to try as best they can to reestablish and reconstruct the crime scenes themselves. To me, one of the key factors would be in reconstructing the shooting itself, the chase. For instance, when I did it in one of these most recent videos, I couldn't make Buford's story work out. I mean, from what I understand, Jim Moffitt and Warren Jones uh, established the ambush as having occurred at approximately 4:45. Folks, it's pretty dark out right then. And when I tried to reconstruct the accident in that same time frame, I couldn't make it work. I couldn't see to drive down that road now, even though it has markings in the middle and signage on the sides. Uh, those markings and signage didn't exist back in those days. But yet Buford said that in that 7/10 of a mile, with him driving 45, 50 miles an hour, uh, that they were able to catch up with him. I don't know how without him having noticed them, but he insisted that he didn't notice them until they pulled up alongside and started firing the shots. Um, I don't know what all they did to find the firearm. And of course, as you know, I had an individual contact me saying that he felt like he could possibly have the gun that was used in the ambush. And like I say, I've heard that story a dozen times before. I always follow it up. This time, when I did, it checked off a lot of the boxes. And so I drove over to visit with this individual, got the information off the gun, uh, you know, and convinced them that it should be reported to the TBI. And that happened. And then things got started again. So don't know if it is the gun. I do know that Buford had more than one of this particular type weapon. And I'm not prepared to say a whole lot about this because I don't know what the TBI would want out there floating around the public right now. So there's a lot of things I'm not talking about. But at any rate, folks, you have to be rested assured that they're looking into this. They're serious. They're wanting to close this case. It's always been one of the biggest ones on their plate. I mean, you look back over the years, you've had what? Uh, Pauline Pusser, you've had Martin Luther King, you've had some other high profile cases, but this is one of the bigger ones. And this one includes, you know, like I say, Buford Pusser, Tennessee's biggest law enforcement icon. Did he do it or didn't he? Uh, we need to know. And that's the reason the TBI is looking into it. I wouldn't think it would take a whole lot longer. They've been looking into it for some time. I would be surprised if it didn't get cleared up one way or the other pretty quick. So there you have it. You know as much as I know. When I learn something, I try to share it with you, as long as I'm certain it's not going to interfere with their case in any way. So there is that. If I hear something that I can put out there, I'll do it. But I guess that's all I wanted to say for this particular episode. I've had so many inquiries in the videos. Uh, like I say, comment sections, telephone calls, emails, messages. Everybody's wanting to know when this is going to get wrapped up, and I don't know. So, at any rate, folks, hang in there with us, and we'll see what happens. Until next time, just remember, truth has no agenda. Thanks. Be sure and subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll get notifications of new videos when they're released.